In this next video, I'm going to show you how to use the Enter Stock Label screen. The only time you really have to use the Enter Stock Label screen is if you're trying to reprint labels for things that are already in stock. Might be an example where a label has fallen off of a box and you just need to reprint it, or maybe you've done a price increase on a particular supplier and you need to reprint labels for everything on hand in that supplier. To get there, you can be at the top level or you can be at that individual store level at the top right hand corner, and you're going to go to Inventory, Labels, and EnterStockLabels. This will bring you into the EnterStockLabels screen. You have two different tabs here, the Stock Label Entry and the Stock Labels Entered. We're going to start by going over the Stock Label Entry. You see the label selection method. To the right of that, the default is selected SKUs, user enters what labels to print. If I click on the drop down, these are your choices. You have selected SKUs, one label for each item on hand. So that's if you wanted to print everything for a particular SKU and all of its on hands. Then we have selected SKUs, user enters what labels to print. And that's when maybe you have a barcode label that has fallen off just one particular shoe, or you just need it for a couple different items for that shoe, not everything on hand. You could select this one where you can just do individual items. Then we have purchase order SKUs, one label for each item on the PO. This is where you can print labels for an entire PO. And then the last one is all SKUs, one label for each item on hand. So an example there would be if I did a price increase on all of my Nikes and I wanted to print everything on hand for Nikes, then I would choose this one. We're going to start with selected SKUs, user enters what labels to print. If I click on that, then I can go to the right of the SKU. So I can either type in the SKU or I can use the lookup to look up an item and select it. The difference between being at the top level and the store level, if you're at the top level and you're entering stock labels, you're going to have to enter in that store number that you want to print a label or labels for. If you're at the store level up at the top right, then you don't have to type in a store because you're already at that individual store. Since I'm at this top level, I went ahead and put in store 1 for this example. Then you notice the SKU information is here in this box, and then to the right the size grid comes up empty. So this allows me to put whatever quantity I want of what size. So let's say I just needed a size 7. I didn't need any other sizes because the barcode label fell off the box. Then I could just go put a quantity of 1 in size 7 and I could click on Save down at the bottom. Once I save it, it's going to tell me how many labels are saved to be printed for what I just saved. If that was the only item that I was going to print, enter in and print, then I could have clicked on Save and Print Labels, and that would have saved what I had on the screen and brought me directly to the Print Stock Label screen. But if I have other things that I want to enter stock labels for before I actually go to the print screen, then I would just click on the Save button. The next option I'm going to show you is the selected SKUs, one label for each item on hand. So this is where if you want to print everything on hand for one particular SKU. So you can go ahead and either type in the SKU or look it up and select it. Once you select it, everything that's currently on hand for that SKU will show up on the screen. And you can click on Save down at the bottom. And again, once it's saved, it'll tell you how many labels are saved to be printed for that. The next option is purchase order SKUs, one label for each item on the PO. So here you have different fields that you can look up certain information. Like if you only want to look up a particular supplier or class or color or SKU or PO or product custom entries, you can do that here. If you know the PO, it's easiest just to go down to the right of PO number and just type in the PO and look it up. The other thing is the options down at the bottom. if you only want to print labels for items on order, or if you only want to print labels for items that have been received. In this example, I just looked it up by the PO, and I'm going to click on Save, and that will save a label for everything that's on this order. And again, it tells you how many labels were saved to be printed. And like I said, the other option when doing this is if you only want to print labels that have been received on this purchase order, you can choose only print labels for items received. And now the last option that you can use on the EnterStockLabels is all SKUs, one label for each item on hand. So this is generally used if you have a supplier that has done a recent price increase where they have increased all the costs and now you're going to increase all the retails and you need to reprint labels for everything on hand for that supplier. This would be a perfect example of what you would use to get labels for all of that on hand for that supplier. And again, you can do it by supplier, by class, by color, by SKU, by product custom entries. You could also do it by the options down below, date last received from and to. In this example, I'm going to choose everything for New Balance. And then I'm going to click on Save down at the bottom. And now it tells me that there's 340 labels to be saved and printed. And again, if you were just putting in a label and you were done and you were ready to print, you could save yourself a step by clicking on Save and Print Labels. That'll save what you're doing here on this screen, and it will automatically bring you to the Print Stock Label screen. So the next tab is the Stock Labels Entered. If we click on that, that's going to show us all of our labels that we've entered and have not printed yet. So this gives you the opportunity to see what's sitting there so you'll know what's going to be printed. If you click on Check, Uncheck All, that's going to show you exactly how many labels are in there in the label file completely with all of the users. If for some reason you made a mistake and you wanted to delete all the labels, you could click on Check, Uncheck All, and you could click on the Delete Selected Labels. You could resort these, so if you were just looking for your particular user, you could go to the user and just look up your labels that you've entered in. And then I can click on Lookup. So now it only shows my labels. It doesn't show any of the other users in the company. And if I click on Check, Uncheck All, there's 370 of those in there to print. And if I wanted to go ahead and go to the Save and Print Labels, I could do that and that would bring me to the Print Label screen. Or I could delete this. If I wanted to delete everything, I could click on Delete Selected Labels. There's all kinds of different ways to sort this. I can sort these by store, by user, by class, by supplier, by SKU. I can also click on this Entered On, and that sorts it by when they were entered. The quantity, I can sort it by SKU, by description, by supplier code, by column, by row, by color, by location, by on hand, and by entered by just by clicking on these. So I could click on supplier code, and that would sort everything together by each supplier. And now we have the suppliers in alphabetical order. So I could easily do my user, and maybe I only wanted to look at just the New Balance. I could go to supplier and just put the New Balance code and sort it. I can click on Lookup, and that will do just my user with the supplier of New Balance. And if I made a mistake and I really didn't want the New Balance, I could click on Check, Uncheck All, and I could click on the Delete Selected Labels. So this gives you a good idea of how to use this EnterStockLabel screen and what's all involved. I think you'll find that it's really a time saver when you're trying to enter stock labels for several different items. If you're doing it for an entire vendor or entire class, it just saves you a lot of time so you don't have to manually enter the labels that you need for each size.